the last few years, my home hasn't felt like home. The natural lighting that the windows offer has been washed out. The air itself has been stale. Oftentimes, I'd find that two shadow people would walk around my home. At first, they didn't seem to notice me, or really ever acknowledge me at that point. When I did see them, which would usually just happen in small blips, it was just of their silhouettes. Sometimes they'd be walking around, sometimes they'd be sitting down, sometimes they'd stand around, usually in my bedroom doorway. I'd debate with myself as to whether or not it was just my mind playing tricks, or if I was actually witnessing something paranormal. Despite myself questioning, I know I wasn't entirely crazy because my dog Chowder would also see them. He actually seemed to love them. He was never truly able to interact with them, but he'd often dance around their shadows and would try barking to gather their attention. It rarely worked though, and he would usually just end up tired and deflated. Sometimes, however, when he would bark, the shadows would stop moving, almost as if they were in fact shocked by his calling. I'd often wonder if they could see me as I could see them, or even Chowder for that matter. Sometimes, and it'd be very rare at that, they would react to our actions. When that would happen, that'd usually be the only time I could hear them. In response to our actions, they'd speak back to us in faint whispers. I was never able to truly make out what they were saying. In fact, only a few times I was able to make out my name, and even Chowder's too. If I wanted to communicate with them, I'd usually have to move something or make a lot of noise. All that being said, I felt as though I had a strange bond with them. I wasn't exactly fearful of their presence, and I didn't know who they were or why they were living among us until I inevitably found out. I died 3 years ago. I died in a car crash while driving home from the dog park. I had died at the scene, and Chowder passed away on the drive to the emergency vet. My brother and sister back at home were devastated by the news. They would often cry and call out for us by name. From time to time, they would stand in the bedroom doorway and mourn. A few times they had tried to communicate to us directly, but the barrier between was too strong. All I could seem to cast to them was my shadow and the occasional noises I'd make. In return, all I can get back are their shadows and occasional whispers. Their muffled, faint whispers. I grew up in an 8-bedroom farmhouse with my dad until I grew up and moved out. We always had extra rooms not being used, and because of the age of the house plus all this extra space, there was always an eeriness like someone looming in the shadows. If I had to get a drink in the middle of the night, I looked at the ground the whole time because I was scared of what may be looking back at me from the dark corners, rooms and hallways. Even the windows and mirrors were avoided because I wasn't sure what I'd see looking back at me. When I was around 12 years old, I questioned why the room that used to be my nursery was locked from the outside. I didn't think it was weird before then. My dad needed a room for storage, and I figured he just wanted to keep me out. I brought it up to him one day, asking what's so important in there that he needs to keep me out, even though I'm not a child anymore. Turns out that I was not entirely correct about the lock. My dad, with a very serious demeanor, sat me down and answered my inquiry. When I was a baby, around 1 or 2 years old, I slept in this nursery room on the 2nd floor, next to my dad's room. This room was painted by my sister especially for me, with Winnie the Pooh characters and fluffy clouds, the type of thing I think back on and appreciate. The effort and creativity was so admirable. I have a photo of me smiling at Pooh Bear on the wall while we were sitting it up, but I'm not the most tech-savvy to figure out how to link this photo. Anyway, I was in this nursery in my crib, again right next to my dad's room, the perfect age to be on my own. Every night though, my dad was woken up by me screaming, crying. He raised 4 children before me, so he was not making first-time parent mistakes that would otherwise be in question. He considered bringing my crib back into his room, but of course the nursery was all ready to go. I had just graduated. For a while when I cried in terror, he would come in and check on me, only to find out nothing was wrong in the sense of present stressors like temperature, diaper change, hungry or thirsty. He would stay with me until I fell asleep or keep the light on to make me feel safer. and then returned to his room to get some actual rest. One day, after finally having enough of my distress, he decided to camp out on the floor of my nursery to see if he could figure out what was the matter, but mostly to try and sleep through the night. This was the last time anyone slept in there. I was able to doze off now that I wasn't alone. He, on the other hand, was tossing and turning on the hard wood floor, not comfortable enough to sleep. As he lay there on the floor, mulling over the situation, boom, he was jolted to his feet by a few massive blows to the floorboards beneath him, centered directly on his back, as if someone on the first floor had a battering ram aimed at the ceiling. His first instinct was to rush downstairs and check for intruders. He is a man of logic, brave, and ready to defend his family. However, when he got down there, the lights were off. There was no one downstairs. Front door locked, windows locked, no sign of forced entry. No one else lived with us. Our closest neighbor was down the road a quarter mile. And why would they break in just to bang on the ceiling, let alone have it mapped out where my dad would be sleeping in my nursery? And the force of the blows, this wasn't normal. After this event, my dad brought my crib back into his bedroom, and I was able to sleep without screaming or crying beyond needing a diaper change or something normal. He brought the Bible in the nursery for extra measure and casted out any evil that might have invited itself there. He locked up that nursery and only used it for storage after that, and only went in during the daytime. To this day, the old lock is still on the door, as if a lock will keep spirits locked in. Short of pretending that experience never happened, he couldn't rationalize it enough to do anything else. We think that the entity was evil and malicious, and when my dad tried protecting me, this only made it pissed off. As I grew up in that house, I had a hard time sleeping in any room on my own. Many nights I ended up rushing to the couch in the living room, turning the TV on and watching Disney till I fell asleep. But even then, I was not comfortable. There were always eyes on me. There were many more unexplained events from the farmhouse, but this was the most direct encounter with evil my dad has ever had.